Well, hey, everybody, it is Lisa from True North Homeschool Academy, and I'm here with Anna Knaub, who's one of our fantastic teachers. She teaches Lit and Comp at True North, and we are here to talk to you guys today about the death of the essay. This was a discussion in our teachers group, and there's an article going around about how do we really need essays and are they really important? And so Anna and I are going to talk to you about what we think about the death of the essay. So we're glad you're here. Anna, I'm so glad you're here.
Hello, thank you. Yes, the 2-year-old is going, Mom, I want to paint still. So I'm apologizing in advance here.
No problem. And you guys you were at the end of our first semester for True North Homeschool Academy classes. You just finished up Austen and Bronte, dystopian lit, and medieval literature. So you've had a full busy semester of teaching essay writing and reading essays.
Yes, yes. And I have loved every minute of it because I just have such a killer group of kids. I think I've asked all of them, are you a junior or a sophomore? Okay, great, because I need you in my class next year because
Yeah.
I love you. Like I want them all again forever.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You're going to be teaching a summer class, doing a book where you really dive in deep. Oh, right. You're going to tell us the 2 book studies you're going to do this summer for summer session.
Yeah, so the first one that I am doing is 1984. And I did that this past summer, and we literally just read the book.
Yep.
We talk about literary analysis, and it is just a deep dive Socratic seminar style of 1984. And I did have a few kids in the summer join the class this fall, and they're so glad that they took it because they felt like they came in with like so much more depth and understanding, like just a little ahead of the ball game.
And you're talking about for the dystopian lit full year class.
Yes.
Because you read that in that class too. And so even though it was a bit of an overlap, this is one thing we've talked about in the teachers page over and over is that, review and going over things, just you can layer your understanding and the kids can too. So that quick getting through it and checking the box, that's helpful sometimes, but sometimes doing deep dives and doing it like the 6-week summer class with 1984, and then doing it again as a quarter read and a full year dystopian class, your kids are going to be able to really get a deep dive into what George Orwell meant and the dystopian themes and all that kind of stuff. So great stuff. Okay, that's one class you're teaching this summer. What's the second one?
The second one that I am teaching is a very similar style class, but for Hamlet. Because next fall I'm going to be doing a full year Shakespeare class. And Hamlet was not going to fit in the schedule. And so this was my way to get Hamlet in the schedule. So I'm hoping that kids that are interested in the full year Shakespeare class take the summer Hamlet class, because Hamlet is like the pinnacle of Shakespeare work. I was just watching a Harold Bloom interview, and he was talking about how Shakespeare created personality in writing. He said prior to that, you had moral right and wrong kind of things, but Shakespeare is who turned writing in from kind of moral right and wrong into personality and giving human depth in literature, which just like,
wow, that is such a great point.
Yeah, like even, and I was thinking about it, like even because I'm doing medieval lit this year, Beowulf, Chaucer, right? Like we think Chaucer and Canterbury Tales, like they're great, but they're all moral metaphors and allegories. And I was like, wow, that is so true.
So I want to just back up. You're going to do Hamlet this summer for the 6-week summer session, and then you're going to do a full year of Shakespeare in the fall. And the reason why is your medieval lit and comp goes along with the medieval history that Natasha Jones is teaching. And then next year you're doing Shakespeare. Natasha's going to do Renaissance history. So we've got those two, that classical track. If you guys are interested, these are great teachers and great classes. Super excited for those.
And Shakespeare was actually my concentration in college.
Really?
I fully went into school intending to teach college.
Yeah.
And then I actually fell in love with teaching Shakespeare to high schoolers. Teaching Romeo and Juliet to freshmen is like the joy of my life.
That's awesome.
That was my first experience. So getting to write this class, rereading all of the plays, watching watching the various TV versions. I will die on the hill that Denzel Washington is one of our best Shakespeare actors of our age. He's just incredible in Much Ado About Nothing, and his Macbeth, his new Macbeth is just
okay.
So yeah, my poor husband, pray for him. Anyway.
He's fine. He's fine. Okay, so that's just a quick preview of some of the classes you can expect this summer and in the fall. But again, back to the death of the essay, and you touched on it a little bit. We were talking about, like, do we really think what is the death of the essay? AI has come along, and AI has so many uses. It's good stuff. And also there's some, ethical questions regarding it, obviously, like any new tech. One of those questions is, if AI can write as well as a person, do we need to teach essay writing to kids anymore? And you and I are both coming from kind of a English background, you more formally than I am, but we're both really committed to good writing. And so tell me what you think about, do you think that the AI is just going to wipe out the need to teach writing to our kids?
If that were the case, then we wouldn't have authors anymore. And we wouldn't have, we wouldn't have any kind of writing, because AI would create all of our literature. It would create, there would be no need for more than half of academics, really, if you think about it. So I think to say that AI would completely take over is preposterous. But I do think that it's something as teachers, we need to be aware of, and we do need to be able to argue why you need to learn this. It's kind of like the spelling concept, right? Why do I need to learn how to spell? That's what I spell check for. Till you use the wrong homonym, and there, and there are not the same. And your spell check is not going to say that, so.
So we were talking about, you said it would take out half of academics when we were talking prior to the recording. One of the things that we're both pretty committed to is that good writing is good thinking. And one of the things that writing does for our students is it actually disciplines them and teaches and demands that they think well. So the exercise of writing actually is honing your kids' critical thinking skills and ability, and their reasoning abilities. And I think we can all agree that on Facebook, we all see really dumb arguments where people are up in arms and I'm leaving, they all go off in a huff and blah, blah, blah. And it really, you were talking about context cues too, but really the inability to reason well and think through a series of logical arguments. Writing teaches that to the brain. So, I mean, do you have anything to add to that? I think we could just camp on this probably all day.
And the thing is, I do self-assessments at the end of each of my semester for my students. And one of the questions on there is, where do you think you had the most growth this semester? And out of all of my students, almost 100% of them said, my writing and being able to like organize and articulate, my writing and my thoughts and just organize it. Like, they all were like, my writing is better.
Wow, that is so cool. They're seeing that too.
Yes.
Right? So and that's the thing too. If you can organize an essay, you can organize how to plan a trip. You can organize your kitchen. You can organize an argument. I mean, there's so much you can organize if you can organize an essay, right? Because those are transferable skills.
Absolutely.
That you can apply to anything, right?
Sure.
So I love that you brought in organization too, because it's not just, organization is probably a subset of critical thinking, but it's so important to be able to just manage your life.
Well, and you need to be able to connect dots to things.
Right.
We talk often about writing the thesis. Or we were talking earlier about a prompt. A lot of my students, struggling with the concept of answering a prompt, not giving me a summary of what happened, but maybe looking between the lines, critical thinking, which I know we'll get into here. And always going back, I always tell my kids, every one of your body paragraphs should relate back to your thesis. Your thesis should always support, answer, whatever, what the prompt is. If you're not following that hierarchy, it's wrong.
Right.
You need to fix it. You need to adjust something.
Right.
And that, how many things do we talk about in life that are scaffolded
Right. Oh, yeah.
and have that organization like that?
Mhm. Yeah.
So like you said, it's really transferable to
Right.
a lot of skills, even if it doesn't seem like it.
Right. It's actually transferable to biology, honestly. I mean, as you were thinking, I was just like, and logic and so many other disciplines where you do have that clearly set out hierarchy. And if you understand the hierarchy, so many things just naturally fit into it.
Right.
And if you understand a thesis, you also understand an antithesis, which
Yes.
I think is really important, right?
Yes.
So tell us, and for those of you who don't know, you can probably define it much more succinctly than I am. What's an antithesis?
Oh gosh, you put me on the
Oh,
spot here,
okay,
Lisa.
I can do it if you. I'm like, can I define it? So if you have a thesis that states something, this is that. The antithesis is, but some
Just
people
the
believe
opposite.
that this is not that. So
Right.
yeah, but I think it's important to teach that to kids. And you do that implicitly in writing, but in some of the programs that we use, it's explicit. That's actually one of the exercises in some of our upper level writing classes where they have to add an antithesis. And it really helps kids. If you can write an antithesis, it means you have a really clearly defined thesis. If you
Right.
can't write an antithesis, it means your thesis is probably a little mushy and needs tightened up. And that's
Right.
always the hardest part of writing is tightening it up. What are you really going to focus on? Because there's always more. And my daughter and I were talking about this with one of her research projects for college. She's like, well, there's so many possibilities. Once you start researching, there's more and more and more. The world opens up, and good writing is distilling it down to like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part of writing in some ways is what are you going to focus on and what are you actually not going to focus on? Back to critical thinking skills, right? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And even just the creativity and the uniqueness of it.
Yeah.
I wrote my freshman year of college. Again, this tells you a lot about me. My capstone paper that year was anti-Semitism and racism in Shakespeare's works.
Wow.
And my writing professor was like, that was not a prompt given to me. We just had to do a research paper.
Yeah.
So everybody else was doing like fun things. I went to a Christian college, so like worship music or whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's me writing this 15-page paper
Right.
on anti-Semitism and racism in Shakespeare's works.
I love it.
And she was like, Anna, this is awesome, but what are you like? This
Yeah.
is not what normal kids write about. But that's, you lose that in AI. You know,
Yes.
like who's coming up with things like that?
Right.
It's certainly not AI, you know?
Right. Right. And AI has a programmer behind it. So it is artificial intelligence, but it's only it's not deep. It can be wide, but it depends on how it's programmed. Depends on the technology behind the AI. There's some AI that's more advanced than others, but the writing AI is pretty, I would say I don't know. Some of it is very sophisticated, but as far as like really critically thinking deeply about anti-Semitism and Shakespeare, I'd be really curious if there was AI that could handle that, just that's available commonly at this point. I would
Me too,
love
because
it.
it was not easy to research.
No, I bet it wasn't. That's like that could be like a dissertation, actually. Um, One of the other things we were talking about in regards to the death of the essay is just how language, I heard an apologetic several months ago about how language actually proves intelligent design, that our ability as humans to speak and to write and to use language to communicate is so unique to us as creatures that is actually proof of intelligent design. And I know that this is like a thing for you, like you love this kind of
It
apologetic
is,
stuff.
it is.
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's true. Like we were created so uniquely and so beautifully. And there's a lot of beautiful and awesome parts about technology. I mean, you and I both know people that have, for various disabilities or struggles or medical reasons, like they have needed things like this.
Yeah.
I was just seeing there are these cool new glasses that people that are deaf can wear. And it like listens for them and actually gives them like subtitles. And so like as they're having a conversation, it will listen and subtitle for them
Wow.
as a like that is incredible and
Amazing.
life-changing for
Yeah, oh
sure.
yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that is totally like a God-inspired
Right.
kind of thing to have. I think anytime that you start to try and do AI,
Mhm.
it's playing God to a degree.
Mhm.
And anything that goes with that, starts to
Yeah.
get a little hairy for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's probably a time and a place for
Mhm.
certain components of AI like that,
Yeah.
but academics is not it.
Yeah. Right. Because it takes away the responsibility and the accountability of the person or the student. And I think it's like I think Anna went on a child errand.
Oh, the 2-year-old is just, like stuck in
I
her
love
shopping
it.
cart. It's fine.
Yeah. So it takes away from the accountability of the student. And again, the whole purpose of teaching our kids how to do these things is for them to be able to think and have the ability to reason and synergize information. AIs really don't synergize very well, and people do. And so you can't synergize what you don't know if you've outsourced to computers or AI. That's why learning how to write and learning how to write cursive, different brain activity in your head than typing on a keyboard. We need to teach our kids those skills because it builds neural pathways. And the more neural pathways you have, the more you can synergize. So that is pulling together all this information. That's how we got AI in the first place, is people who could
Right.
synergize really super well. Because somebody who comes up with glasses that can subtitle while you're hearing, I mean, that's a lot of synergy happening. That's
Yes.
miraculous, right?
Yes,
That's like
for sure.
crazy.
And
Yeah.
I think it's, I imagine being an academic, reading a paper, right? Reading a journal, going to an author and having questions.
Yeah.
And they have no idea how to respond because they didn't write it.
Yeah.
And that's totally a teacher trick for catching plagiarism too, is like, oh, do you know what this sentence means?
Uh-huh.
And, or like, what context was this written in? I can look at papers that I've written or, papers I've written and have conversations with people. And I might have cited a sentence,
Yeah.
but I could talk about the work as a whole or the
Yeah.
article as a whole contextually along with my paper, right?
Yeah.
And so AI might be pulling resources, but is it in context? Is it truly applicable?
Right.
They might be pulling a sentence that's an antithesis from a whole paper,
Right.
right? But because it fits in the paper that it's working with,
Mhm.
you have no idea. And so I just can't imagine that the thought goes beyond that information as well as people think it would.
Yeah.
Um, and I will die on the hill of teaching the essays and the art of researching and writing as a whole until I'm dead,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Before we started, we were talking about Harold Bloom, who
Yeah.
is a Yale professor, if I remember correctly, incredible. And if we start relying on AI, if students and teachers start relying on AI, we will never have authors like that again.
Yeah.
I mean, his work, Shakespeare, the invention of the human, is profound.
Mhm. Yeah.
And and he did that before the internet.
Right. Right.
I mean, truly, he wrote that book
Mhm.
over the span of like 15 years before the internet.
Wow.
And when we take, and Shakespeare wrote well before the internet.
Yeah.
When you take things like AI, again, it's incredible to have these resources at our fingertips. I
Mhm.
love showing kids that, hey, if you find like a book
Yeah.
on Google, it'll like, you can copy and paste the citation right there. It has
Yeah.
it for you. I mean, super awesome.
Yeah.
But when we rely too heavily, not just on AI, but as technology as a whole,
Mhm.
we lose that creativity
Yeah.
because it's getting spoon fed to us. We're
Right.
not forced to sit with our thoughts. We're not forced to think outside of it, to go beyond the first page of a Google search,
Yeah.
you
Right. I
know?
love that.
Um,
Sit with your thoughts. That's so important. I think it's really easy. We have the world at our fingertips, and yet really, there's so much learning to be done with getting input and then just sitting and seeing what our brains do with it and seeing where God takes us with it. Instead of all this constant input of the phone and the videos and the YouTube. And I think that's why we need phone breaks. I mean, Angie Farrell and I just did a podcast and we're talking about the same thing. Like, you need digital detox days at least once a week, and even like longer, for longer lengths of time. So not to have that constant input coming into your brain, but having a rest time allows your brain to actually think harder and work
Yeah.
smarter.
Yeah.
It seems a little antithetical, but yeah, I love that. Yeah. We were talking about plagiarism too.
Yeah.
And this is something I think in this age of cut and pasting, where it's so easy to share a meme and
Yeah.
you're not stealing, you're sharing. That's what social media
Right.
encourages us to do. We want broader reaches, so we're
Right.
sharing. And I think we've all learned hard lessons by watching colleagues get sued and paying big bucks because they didn't cite the source of the share.
Yes.
And that's one of the things we're finding in our classes, is that the kids really don't have an understanding of what plagiarism is. We go over it and over it in our Lit and Comp classes, but we really hit it
Sure.
hard in English because that's where they're citing sources more,
Right.
if they cite them.
If they say them. Yeah, and we were talking about this. The issue that we end up having is kids will give us a works cited page,
Yes.
but there's nothing cited in the paper.
Right.
And so you're like, what are you citing?
Yeah.
And that's another absolute concern with AI. Plagiarism is turning in, using something as your own that is not.
Yes.
In its basis and in its most basic level, in its intellectual theft, right? And so to turn in something using AI, it feels borderline because nobody's getting hurt. Nobody's being stolen from.
Yeah.
But ethically, it's not your work.
Right.
You did not do it, and you did not give AI the credit. The argument could be had, I oftentimes encourage my kids to use EasyBib to help them with their bibliographies.
Yeah.
They're not then citing EasyBib as a resource.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do.
And so I could see the argument that, like, well, I don't cite EasyBib that helped me with my bibliography, so why would I cite AI to help me with my paper?
Yeah. Because it's being thought of as a tool, not the actual content. Yeah, there is a fine line there with AI, isn't there? Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the biggest difference is one is helping formatting structure.
Yeah.
Like, it helps you with organize, the author's name, the title, the publisher, the publication date, whatever. AI essays are the content.
Yeah.
And if it's not your content and it's not being cited, it is theft. It is plagiarism.
Yeah.
It is not yours.
Right.
If you did not come up with the sentence in your brain, it's not yours. That's just what it is. And so getting kids to understand just the idea of citing it. And it's hard for them. And this happens in public school too. So I am totally not like this is a homeschool problem. I taught public school for 5 years. It's hard for them when they're coming out of elementary school into middle school, even middle school into high school, even, sophomores, juniors, and seniors who, maybe weren't really pushed to do citations or writing like this. It's hard for them to understand that, like, in college, if you get caught plagiarizing, there are universities that it is not like oh, well, don't do it again. It is a do not pass go, do not collect 200, you're out.
We're out.
Like you just said, colleagues that get sued because they didn't cite something, whether intentionally or unintentionally.
A homeschool business was actually sued for sharing a meme that had no context on it. There was no author or anything. And someone sued them for it and took them to court. A lot of money involved. And that, I mean, I really do think, I mean, we were talking about this too. We're we're not looking at the kids as malicious or trying to get away with anything. In many ways, they just don't know. And they're so acclimated to social media, which is really share heavy, that there's this idea of what's the difference between sharing and plagiarism. And this is what writing a good essay is going to teach them.
Yeah.
Just one of the many skills writing a good
Yeah.
essay will teach them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's the death of the essay, not on my watch. I feel like teaching our kids to learn how to write a simple 3 to 5 paragraph essay in junior high, and then moving on into more in-depth essays and all kinds of comparative, persuasive, all the types of essays is so important to them, because you're going to write essays the rest of your life, even if you have some AI stuff going on.
Yep.
And creating that good content in your life. Essays really have changed the world, right? I mean, the sword is mightier, or the pen is mightier than the sword.
Yeah.
And I think that still holds true, that people can change everything with a good, well-written essay.
Yeah.
AI is not going to give us that depth of thought and the synergistic thought that a human being can be, because AI is not created in the image of God. People are. Big difference right there.
For sure. I just think about all of the essays that I've read, not just my students, but as a student, like doing research for different papers and different books. My husband's uncle is a poultry expert. And it's really funny, but it's super true.
I love it.
And he just came out with, I think, the 5th edition of his poultry and breeding book. And it's essentially a collection of his essays over the years. And what's really cool about it, I was just talking to him about it at Thanksgiving, is they go through the essays when they're doing a new edition. And okay, what do we know now that we didn't know when I wrote this 10 years ago?
Yeah.
And they update information where necessary. They add like new ones that he's written since the last edition. But I mean, there are legitimately poultry people around the world that use that book as like a Bible for their chickens. And which sounds like such a silly example, but
it's not. I totally get it.
But I mean, he's the guy helping the Google building out in Pittsburgh. He went out there and helped them put chickens on their roof for their cafe to have fresh eggs. Also heard this story at Thanksgiving. And so, it's seemingly silly things like that. AI is not writing those essays.
Right.
AI is not writing essays on the effects of the Crusades on the English language. As AI is not writing essays, and it can't. It just can't. And I know that I read another article that Google is working on scanning in every single book ever.
Wow.
They are working on a collective beehive, basically, like an international, worldwide, start to finish, the oldest literature and text we have, all the way to the newest. Every single book in existence, they're working on scanning and digitizing.
Wow.
Which, like, in a lot of ways is kind of cool. As somebody who has a wild library collection, which I know you do too, like, it feels cool in my brain. It is going to give people in remote parts of the world who barely have internet access to things that they would not normally. But how much easier then is it also going to make it for things like AI to write essays? Because now it's going to have the resources in the books to research.
Yeah. Exactly. Wow, that is interesting. I'm gonna have to. I'll try to find where that's at and put a link in here in the show notes, because we're going to turn this into a podcast too. So check out the podcast. And it is the Life Skills 101 Life Skills for Digital Age podcast, which this fits in very nicely too. And I see Nora has joined us. She has been advocating for painting since we've been talking. So I love it. I love it. And like I said, I don't think this is the age of the death of the essay, nor do I think it should be in any future generation, because this is a great tool to teach our kids critical thinking skills, help them understand language as a tool because they're created in the image of God, teach them the difference between plagiarism and creating content versus using tools and doing hard things. Such good skills, all in one little paper. I love it.
Teachers know. Like
Yeah.
I tell my kids, just don't plagiarize because I'm going to find it. I find it
Yeah.
every single time. And I
Yeah.
honestly do.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that after reading short responses on things that you're going to pull out an essay that looks like a college professor wrote it.
Exactly.
You know, like it just doesn't work that way. And so for a student to, you know, if we're talking about our level as a teacher, for a student to try and use AI on an essay is just silly
Yeah.
because you as a student, the chance that you're going to write like that on the regular is slim.
Right.
So
Yeah.
just learn how to write.
Learn how to write. Yeah. And okay. So, and I just want to do one more plug for your fall classes too. Well, people can join you for spring to take the Bronte portion of the Austen and Bronte class. Is that true? Correct?
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, if they really wanted to, I just finished listening to Wuthering Heights again. And I'm like, good Lord, this is going to be a fun one.
Oh my gosh. Better you than me. There's a couple books in my can't stand pile, and that's kind of one of them. But I mean, we can talk about that later. But you can join Anna for spring semester doing Bronte. It's a half credit of English. And she'll be doing 2 classes on deep dives into books this summer for our 6-week summer session. And then next fall, she'll be back with Dystopian Lit and Comp again. That class fills fast. So if you want it, we're going to open registration in January. Keep an eye out for it. And then you're also going to be doing Shakespeare, a year-long Shakespeare class. Woo, and comp.
We're doing 6 plays.
6 plays. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay, and then help me out with the third one. I know what it is, but
that was it. Austen Bronte, Dystopian, and Shakespeare. Yep.
Okay, so you'll be back doing Austen Bronte in the fall again. Yes. Wonderful class. I mean, yeah, I could just talk. That's on my I do love pile. So I mean, Austen.
So we did Pride and Prejudice first because that's the storyline that most people are familiar with, and to kind of get them into it. And then we read Sense and Sensibility, which was actually her first novel. Yeah. And the kids had so much fun, like reading both of them and going, oh my gosh, this was her first one. And just seeing the differences between the 2 novels and how she did character structure and how strong her themes are. So yeah, that's been a super fun class. And I do have a boy in that class and he's crushing it.
Yeah. These are books boys should read.
Austen Bronte.
Yeah. The dystopian lit too. We've talked about this in other podcasts, but I love it because you really focus on identity and who you are. And this is such an important concept for kids right now. They are being deluged with, you can create your own identity. You can be whoever you want. Look, I can't be a pharaoh. I mean, that is such a lie. You can't be whoever you want. You're who God created you to be. And I think this class, Dystopian Lit, is here. The kids love it. They embrace it. And having a class like this, which teaches them to think critically about the dystopian lit, what makes good dystopian lit, what makes garbage dystopian lit, because there's a lot of both out there. I happen to really love this genre. And then they get to write some dystopian lit on their own. And
I'm so excited for that part.
I mean, that's such a great exercise because it's going to help them. It's not just reading is pretty passive, but writing is a very active exercise. And so it takes them from the lit analysis and really thinking about identity and culture and what if everything ends and are we all going to die in nihilism to what story do I have to share? And even though there's these themes of things could look really dark right now, where is the light and the redemption and the hope at the end of the tunnel? I mean, it's just such a great class for your kids. So yeah excited.
I've been working on it. I'm doing a lot of flipped classroom model for the writing in the spring, just because I want to be able to have the class time to have group discussion, and them talk about their stories and what they're doing.
Tell everybody what a flipped classroom is.
So I'm essentially pre-recording like different lessons and videos kind of thing for them to watch for their homework. And then they'll come to class to talk about it versus me spending the class time lecturing and then them responding to it. And so I have a friend who does videography. She's done some really cool stuff. And so because one of their options is to, their final submission can be any format. It can be a short story. It can be a film. It could be a screenplay, a script, whatever.
Yes.
And so she, as kind of like a behind the scenes person, what does she look for when she's looking in a script? What kind of directions and things?
Oh, cool. Oh, your sound just went out, Anna.
Somebody muted it. What are some things just beyond the story that, you know, she looks for in that? And so she's recording a video and sending that to me. And I love getting to pull in other professionals and people to give real life experience. And I told her, I was like, this isn't kind of my world, so I don't know what questions to ask you. She's like, I got this.
Oh, I love it.
And so just the idea of these kids, they're all just so excited. Like they're ramping up for this all year. And we've done little assignments here and there to prep for it. And we're starting off the semester though, like we talked about, with Imago Day, with the created in the image of, and talking about their identity. I told them all to talk to family over break about, you know, talk to your great aunt about where your family's from. Like, it always surprises me how many kids are like, I think I'm Irish. Like, that was a real shot in the dark there, friend. I have a family that's very into all of that. Again, AI can't make this stuff up. And I know that my family immigrated from Liverpool, that I'm potato famine Irish and things like that. And so I want them to know that stuff coming into the spring semester. Because it's going to build on that concept of identity, not just for them, but as they're creating characters. And these are the kind of things I think about. You know, they sit AIs in front of a TV for 12 hours and then say, okay, write a sitcom, right? And it's a mashup of like crazy things. That's always, I guess, what I think of as AI. They've probably gotten a little smarter by now.
I think there's a lot of good tech going on right now. I mean, it is Techville out there. So some of the AIs are really, really sophisticated. I don't know that that's going to really be, I don't think that the AIs that our kids have necessarily are that sophisticated, have access to, or that sophisticated, but
well, I just can't imagine that AIs would be cool enough to write characters like that. You know what I mean? And just like, and again, with the essay, just having, I don't know. And that goes back to that. We are made so uniquely and creatively. To have AI try and, you know, do that too. I just can't imagine it.
I can't either. Anna, you've taught at True North Homeschool Academy. This is your second year, right? Am I correct? Okay. I kind of lose track on a couple people because you've worked behind the scenes. So it seems like you've been around for a long time.
It does feel that way.
I know. So this is your second year of teaching at True North Homeschool Academy. What's one thing you can tell our listeners or watchers about teaching online with kids? I know a lot of people have some bad experiences. What's one thing you'd like to just leave with everybody today?
It's a lot more fun than you think it is.
I love that.
I think it's a lot more interactive than you think it is too. I think that sometimes people take for granted that's online and that they can just do things at their own pace, or that like, oh, if we skip, it's not a big deal. But our classes really truly are interactive. And we are able to build not just like incredible relationships with our students, and the students have been able to really build friendships with each other, even just seeing each other for an hour a week. And that's been really special for me, and is seeing kids. We were talking about setting in dystopian lit, and kids talking about where they live. We've got kids in Nevada, Louisiana, Pennsylvania, Scotland. We're all in very different settings, right? And just seeing them all talk about the amount of rain that they get, right? It's so much more interactive and fun than you would. Weather did not sound fun, but it's so much more fun and interactive.
The kids always want to talk about weather. I love it. And we do that deliberately. We keep our classes small group in size so the kids can interact with each other and the teachers. But I love that you said that. And your online presence in your classroom, you have so much energy. And so anyway, it's just a delight to have you teaching for True North. So
I love it.
Okay. I'm so glad. And you'll be back next year. But if you guys want to jump into Austin or Bronte this spring, there's place for you. We still have a few seats left in that class.
Yes.
And then check out the 6-week summer session. And of course, next fall, our catalog will be live in January. So coming up soon. All right, Anna and Nora, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for listening in, everybody.